Hello everyone, welcome to the special online version of my Introductions to Capture the Flags class, which I ran on Wednesday. Unfortunately, though it was recorded, technical issues meant that it's not possible to use that recording, so I'll be doing it again. So I want to start by introducing myself. I'm Ruán. I'm currently CS++'s chairperson. I'm a reserve for the Irish cybersecurity team. Myself and 11 others will be going to Norway for a week on the 23rd of October to compete in the European Cybersecurity Championships, which is basically all of the European countries and a few others competing in a Jeopardy and attack defense style CTF. And I'll get onto what those kinds of CTFs are later on in the presentation. I'm a second year in TU858, and I have been one of the primary developers of some of CS++'s core infrastructure like ByteStore and BitHunt. On the side, I do lighting design, and I'm a lighting technician, and I'm the father of Juno and Legs. Now, obviously, I have to pay the dog tax. This is Juno. This is Legs. But with that all out of the way, I want to start by going over what we're doing today. What is this class about? We're going to start by learning what a CTF is, what is CTFD. We'll go over some useful tools like CyberChef, Google, and Ghidra. And we'll do some online practice. So starting with what is a CTF? A CTF is pretty much like a capture the flag, but not running to grab flags. You are doing a couple of cybersecurity challenges of many different topics. Cybersecurity generally revolves around more or less hacking and securing your stuff and finding vulnerabilities. There were two main types of capture the flags. Like I mentioned earlier, there's Jeopardy, which is what we'll be talking about today. You have a whole bunch of challenges that you need to work your way through. Every time you finish a challenge, you will get a flag, and that flag will be worth a certain amount of points. And then there's attack defense. Now, attack defense is a bit more complex, and we're not going to go into it today because it's incredibly complex to set up and requires a lot of knowledge to actually compete. Attack defense is basically you and all of the other teams have the same box running the exact same type of software that has vulnerabilities in it. Your goal is to find and patch the vulnerabilities in your version of the software and then exploit other teams' vulnerabilities in their box to try and get flags. If your service goes down, you lose points. If you attack someone else's service, you take points. It's really fun. It's really cool, but it's not where we're going today, as this is a very basic introduction of what a capture the flag is. Capture the flags are just exactly what they say on the tin. You are to find and to submit a flag. All, of course, under time pressure. CTFs can be 4 to 6 hours with maybe a 1 hour break in between. There's a couple of famous CTFs that I want to bring up. There's HitCon, there's Faust, there's 0 Days. 0 Days is an Irish company that has run, as far as they're aware, the largest in-person CTF in the world back in April of 2023. And this weekend, they will be running quite possibly an even larger event with up to 600 participants in Microsoft. There's the DEF CON CTF. DEF CON is the infamous cybersecurity convention over in the United States. There's the Google CTF, which is famous because it's Google, and then there's Angstrom. In most of these cases, except for 0 Days and DEF CON, as far as I'm aware, they're all online CTFs. And online CTFs normally have thousands and thousands of people if they're big. So let's talk about what CTFD is. CTFD is the biggest Jeopardy capture the flag platform. It's free, open source, really, really customizable, and really easy to get going. It's just a Docker Compose file that you use, and it will throw up 3 containers. So if you just set up a virtual machine server, you just do this and it installs your web server and your database server and the CTFD server. It's a drop-in CTF platform. It's really, really powerful. Most CTFs, whether it be online or in person, use CTFD because it's very scalable and really well known and really well understood. And of course, that's what we'll be using today because I want to get you familiar with one of the most popularly used systems. This is what CTFD looks for you today. It is a landing page with a few things on the top. Obviously, I'm logged in with the admin account. But this is found on ctf.societies.ie. I'll probably be keeping this up until maybe the end of the calendar year, maybe a little earlier, depending on how traffic's going. So if you go to ctf.societies.ie and create an account, you will be able to see and do the challenges at your own pace. So when you create an account and you go to the challenges page, you'll see one challenge at the beginning called Welcome to CTFD1. It's worth 10 points. When you click on it, you will see this. These cards appear every time you click on a challenge. It'll show you the name of it, the points value, and then a description that has been made by the person who created the challenge. In this case, a lot of CTFs do this. It's a couple of challenges that show you how the platform works and gets you easing in. Most CTFs will have what's called a flag format that helps you sometimes to try and find a file or find the flag by just Control-Fing or doing a grep, which is a Linux command. So in this case, for this event and this platform, our flag format is CS++, open curly bracket, the actual flag, and a closing curly bracket. The flag for this is CS++ hacker. So if you were to enter that, you solve this challenge. Now, there's a live demo, which I will do now, just to show you exactly how this works. So if I swap over to my CTFD, which is incredibly zoomed in, great. And I type this, and I go CS++ hacker. Now, many CTFs have this case insensitive. You could have it like this, but it's always recommended to try and be as close to the correct case as you can, because by default flags are case sensitive. Not sure why, but they are. So there we go. That's correct. You can move on to the next challenge, which is CTFD2. Now, CTFD allows the challenge makers to put hints into the challenges. What this does is it sends a request to the server to get the hint. It costs some points to use a hint normally, but it generally helps out quite a lot. People have tried quite hard to get the hint without spending the points. It's not possible. Don't try it. If you want to use a hint, just click the hint. It'll double check. In this case, we'll say yes, please. The flag for this is hints can help, so I'll just copy and paste that. Excellent. Now if we move to CTFD3, CTFD allows the challenge makers to upload files, as many files as they want, whatever size, whatever type. There are no limits. You might get text files, you might get executables, you might get batch files, you might get zip files, you can get anything. In this case, you get flags.txt. So when you download this, and I'll swap to my folder where I have everything downloaded for today, we have flags.txt. Opening this shows a whole bunch of flags. There we go. And you'll see, if I bring in the CTFD, you will see there are 5 attempts and 3 flags. So if we were to enter the first, is it me? You'll see, no, that's not the right one. If we do the second one, how about me? Turns out that's the correct one, and we pass with only using 1 attempt. Sometimes challenges will do attempts as a way to stress you out, or if there's loads and loads of options, it prevents you from brute forcing. Some challenges might have the points go down every time you waste an attempt, but that's a pretty uncommon practice. But I'll continue on. We'll move to CTFD4. This explains a topic called dynamic points. Now, before the actual in-person class, this was worth, I think, 100 points. But with dynamic challenges, with their dynamic points, the more people that solve them, the less that challenge is worth. And that does carry over retroactively. So if you had solved a challenge that was 200 points, that's now 100 points, your points have gone down. So this is a way that a lot of Capture the Flags will try and level the playing field by having challenges which are being solved quite easy, drop in points value, and then having the harder challenges actually more valuable because they are now more expensive relatively to the other challenges. So this is just making you do some maths. This is the algorithm that's being used right now. There's both a linear and logarithmic, but that's not important. So in this case, the points have gone from 100 to 10 due to this equation. So in this case, if we plugged in those values, where the initial value is 100 minus 10 multiplied by 5, the answer to that is 50. And there we go. Now, in some CTFs, you will only see the intro until you finish them, and then everything else opens up. That's what I did here, just to get you focused on through this. So this is the bulk of the CTF open. There's a few more that are still hidden that will appear later on as you solve the challenges, but this is some of the main challenges for today. And this is where I move back to the presentation. So this is where we start with the first challenge. If you go back to your capture the flag and you see a crypto challenge called This is Crypto, and you'll see a very long string of hex characters. If we go back to this, it is this long string of hex characters. Now, you're not expected to know how to read hex. I can't read hex. I don't know anyone who can read hex. So this is where we use our first sort of online tool called CyberChef. So CyberChef is a online tool made available through GitHub Pages. So if you search CyberChef, you'll be linked to a GitHub Pages. It'll load, and you get an input, you get an output, and you get all of this really complex, lots and lots of stuff. But think of this as a way to do lots of encryption or decryption. With crypto in Capture the Flags, you will normally see two types of challenges. There is actual encryption, which could be things like the AES or RSA, which you might have to crack or do some fun maths with. We're not doing any actual encryption because that involves a lot of maths, and this is an introduction class. So we're just focusing on ciphers, and ciphers are basically just representing information in a different way, as opposed to encryption, which deliberately obfuscates it. So let's copy all of this hex. Let's throw it into the input field, and you see you can choose a lot of things to add to what CyberChef calls the recipe. So I will just drag from hex, and you'll see this is now changed to this is base 64, and then a nice long string. Generally, a way of identifying base 64 has equals, and base 64 is, as far as I'm aware, all of the lowercase and uppercase letters, and then all of the numbers, and then a few symbols. So if we hop back to the presentation for a moment, as you'll see, we did that, and when we convert it, it converts into this is base 64 and the long string. So this is basically, you're going to be doing a step ladder. So what you'll do is take away that this is base 64 and copy in this 64-bit string back into CyberChef. So it would look a bit like this. We copy just this part, leaving out that this is base 64, throw this in, get rid of this, and click from base 64. I will now say this is base 32, and you're going to sort of repeat that again and again and again until you get what the answer is. So I'll step through this in the presentation. Base 32, we take it away. This now becomes base 58, you take it away. Base 85, take that away. All of a sudden, you get your first flag for a proper challenge, which is CS++, too many steps. And if we enter that here, that's correct. And now the next challenge is Et tu Brute. Another very commonly used cipher, and something you might know already from general knowledge, is the Caesar cipher. Now the Caesar cipher is a old enough cipher that basically just involves the sender and the receiver agreeing at an earlier point that, oh, I'm going to send you a message, but every letter I'm going to shift forward 4, 5, 6 places, however many places they want. So if we shifted it 2 letters ahead, A would become C, because A going down 2 characters is C, A, B, C. And you do that for the whole string. In this case, you don't know exactly what this is, but this is where your knowledge of the flag format can help. So you know the flag format as CS++, and you'll see that this is JZ. So what you can do is you just copy this, go into your CyberChef, and search ROT. A very commonly used rotational cipher, which is a Caesar cipher. It rotates the letters almost. It's called ROT13. So if you're to throw it in, no, that doesn't look right. So you just slowly go up and up and up, or down if you want, and you'll see that this was actually shifted 19 characters ahead. So now we have CS++ dictated for life as the flag. So we will just throw that in, and that's that solved. And that's crypto finished, more or less. So this is where we move to the next topic called OSINT. OSINT is a very funny way of saying open source intelligence, which is the very military way of saying general knowledge or things you know. I like to just call it the Google it challenges. In most cases, you can just Google it if you don't know it already. So our first OSINT challenge on CTFD is who am I? And the question for that is, what is the first name of the US president in 2001? Now that is CS++. George W. Bush. Next, the next one is what year? This asks a slightly less obvious question. What year was TU Dublin founded? Now, TU Dublin was the combination of IT Tala, IT Blanchardstown, and Dublin Institute of Technology, which became one big technological university on the 1st of January 2019. So we enter 2019. And that's correct. Now, the final one is the harder challenge. And in the case of OSINT and Rev tonight, there were 2 easy enough challenges and 1 harder challenge. So this one is saying, what is the sender's wallet address for the first ever payment sent to WannaCry's developers? Now this, if you didn't know what those were, you'd have to search for what a wallet address is, which would bring you to stuff on like Bitcoin and Bitcoin wallets and cryptocurrency, and what WannaCry is. Now, I assume you know what a Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is, but WannaCry was a very infamous piece of ransomware, which is a type of virus or malware that would infect your system, encrypt all of your files, and go, hey, you have a couple of days to pay us however much in Bitcoin. If you don't, you forever lose all of your files. This happened for around 2017 to I think 2020. That's when the payments stopped, at least. So what you're pretty much looking for is you're just going to Google and you are searching like WannaCry Bitcoin addresses, and you'll see I've already searched this up. Your answer is, obviously this is a purple link. It's unfortunately on Reddit. So there are 3 addresses associated with WannaCry. Now you can go to all 3 of them, but the next step might not be immediately obvious. They want to know what the first ever payment from a victim to WannaCry's developers was. So you have 3 Bitcoin wallets where you have to go all the way to the end and find what that first ever payment was. Here's the first one for this account. 12th of May 2017 at just past noon. The next one is the 12th of May at 1:45. So we know this one obviously can't be it. So it's either this one or the first one we looked at. And if we go all the way back, this is at 3:30. So our answer is here. Now we are looking for the sender's address. So what was the Bitcoin wallet address of the victim? In this case, it's who it's from. So we'll copy this. This is their Bitcoin wallet address. They paid $2,000 to WannaCry to get their stuff decrypted. So we type CS++ and enter in the really long wallet address, click submit, and there's the answer. In most cases, that's it. Open source intelligence is a very simple challenge category and not one that most people specialize in. Think of it as like the pub quiz of the CTFs. It's generally technically related, or if there is a theme to a CTF, it might be related to the theme. So if there's a Harry Potter themed CTF, then it would be questions about Harry Potter probably. So let's move on to Rev and Ghidra. Now, Rev stands for reverse engineering. Ghidra is an open source reverse engineering tool. This basically converts compiled executables, so a .exe file, into C code or assembly code for people to look at and use and try and figure out what's going on. Now, Ghidra was developed by the NSA. It is fully open source and available on GitHub. It is actually what is used by the NSA and the other three-letter agencies. So, yes, we will get onto the potential side effects of that in a moment, but not right now. It's one of the most powerful reverse engineering platforms, especially for the price. Ghidra is fully open source and completely free. So you can fork and make your own versions, or just compile from their own releases if you wanted. It's really modular. It's really powerful. It has lots of built-in tests and analysis for many, many, many different types of compiled executables. It's also very, very complicated to get started. So if you want to install it, you go to ghidra-sre.org. That's Ghidra Software Reverse Engineering, which will lead you to a GitHub page, which I shall show you now. Click download from GitHub. It'll send you directly to the releases page. If you wanted to check the source code to make sure that you're not installing like a tracker or an NSA backdoor into your system, be my guest. But you download this. You need to have the JDK, which is the Java development kit, installed on your computer as a requirement. Otherwise, Ghidra won't run. For this example, I will be using another website, which I will get to in just a moment. I find the Ghidra downloaded executable is very powerful, but it is NSA software, and there is always a chance of the NSA being the NSA and installing a backdoor or installing some sort of tracker. So if you want to avoid Ghidra, and I will do a short demo with Ghidra, I'll do the first challenge in Ghidra and what I'll be actually using for the rest of this talk. Be my guest, but if you don't want to do that, there are a few alternatives. The first is Dogbolt, and that's what I'll be using tonight. It is reverse engineering in your browser. You just upload the file, you choose what reverse engineering software you wanted to use, and it does it and shows you. Obviously not as powerful as the dedicated executables, but it's really handy, especially if you have a not so powerful laptop, because it does all the processing on the server and then shows it to you. This is obviously the opposite of Godbolt, which is a website where you can enter C code and it'll show you the actual assembly. There's also IDA Pro. IDA Pro is an industry standard primarily for malware analysis, where Ghidra is generally used for trying to find backdoors or exploits in software because the NSA want to break into things and hack things. IDA Pro is used to analyze, categorize, and destroy malware. But IDA Pro has a free version, but there is also a paid version that is very, very expensive. So let's start with the first Rev challenge, which I will do both in Ghidra and in Dogbolt. So the first one is called nuns reverse reverse. So if we are to go back to our CTFD instance, you'll see the challenge, and there is a download. This is a Windows executable. You can tell that because it ends with .exe. Linux and macOS use different types of executables. In the case of Linux, they normally use what's called an ELF file, that is extended linkable format. You can generally tell it's one of those because it doesn't have a file type, so it'll just be called like a simple challenge. They won't be simple challenge.elf. But in this case, it's a Windows executable. You could run this on your Windows machine, but this is where I give the disclaimer: never, ever, ever run software from a CTF on your device. If you want to run the software, please do it in a virtual machine. It has been known that in many of the larger CTFs and in some of the more professional capture the flags, you are working with actual malware that can do very serious harm to your computer or your privacy, or get your login credentials leaked. In nearly every case, it is best to do your capture the flag inside a virtual machine and just take the small performance hit, because in most cases you don't need to fully max out your CPU. In this case, I am more than happy to make the C files that I used available. In fact, they're right here, and I can get the C file for the final hardest challenge as well and make those available. But if you don't want to run them, that's fine. You can always just watch me do them here. So what I'll do is I'll go to dogbolt.org. And when you open Dogbolt, you'll see a whole bunch of these are already selected. So what I'll do is I'll turn off Binary Ninja and Anger. I'll just keep Hexrays and Ghidra open for the time being. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag in simplechallenge.exe. And I'm going to say, hi, please analyze this. So you'll see it has spit out a whole load of very confusing C code. Now, if you are a first year or a second, third, or fourth year in the computer science courses, TU 858, 856, 857, you might have a premature understanding of C, but this is complete madness. It's much, much, much more complicated than what you'd normally write in C, because when you compile an executable, your comments, the names of your variables, the names of most functions aren't preserved, because to the computer, it doesn't really matter. So it doesn't care. So if we were to open Simple Challenge, I'll open this in Ghidra as well, just to show you the real desktop experience. Let's have it analyzed. You'll see there's loads and loads of options. The default options are generally the best. So in C, the one thing you will always need to have is a main function. So the first place you try to go, let's do this in Dogbolt, you just Control F to go to main. And eventually you will get to main, because there's lots of mains. Windows throws in a lot of boilerplate and extra information into the executable to get it to actually work on Windows. With Linux, there's a lot less thrown into the executable, so most CTF reverse engineering challenges will be a Linux executable. But in this case, we go to the main, and we're seeing, oh, it's printing something. It's like, hey, enter your key. We see that it takes in a number, and if the number is hex 45, it goes, hey, here's your key, and it prints the key. Now, this is an incredibly simple reverse engineering challenge. In most cases, you will never not. In most cases, you will never get the key just printed out, but I wanted to show you that from what is an executable file, you can get surprisingly readable C code. So we will just throw this into nonce reverse. And there we go. We now move on to what's called one step further. Now, one step further brings things up a bit. If we were to open this in just Ghidra, let's do that here. Let's take away Hexrays for a moment and go all the way back out and drag in harder challenge. You'll see defines a few variables all in hex. It says, alright, wise guy, have a crack, enter your key. And it does this really weird operation here but then prints a string. So you can't immediately grab this. There are kind of two ways to solve this. The first is to figure out what's going on here. Now, this is, or what's going on here. Now, this is a modulus operation. And now, think of modulus as the way to get a remainder for when you divided two things. So if I divided 5 into 4, the remainder is 1. So if I did 5 modulus 4, the answer will be 1. So it's basically saying if the key that they enter is any whole multiple of whatever this hex number is, then that's the key. So you can solve this by converting that hex into a decimal number, and then running the code, or by using hexrays, which is surprisingly more powerful, and it just rips the key out anyway. So if we find our main function, it has managed to figure out that it's doing string copies, and what it does is it'll do a string concatenation. That's basically putting two strings together. So it puts together this and this, which makes your flag CS++ strcat. So there you go. Hexray is very powerful. Hexray is actually what IDA Pro uses, and it's much more developed software because it's enterprise and it's paid, as opposed to being an open source piece of software. So those are the first two Rev challenges, and this is where we go to the much harder challenge called This Zor That. This is a much harder challenge. If we were to open this in Ghidra, I will get rid of hexrays again. We open this or that. You'll see there's no file extension, and that's because this is a Linux file. You'll see, despite this having more C code, it's actually 16 kilobytes, whereas the other two challenges are in the 40 kilobytes, and that's all of the extra information that Windows needs to run executables. So we jump down to main, and we see lots of undefined stuff, and then it goes, oh, I've lost my password, I only remember this weird encrypted password, and there's this weird Zor function. So the name of this function is preserved. So there's this weird Zor function, and it's doing lots of weird maths. But what you will see is this weird hat. This weird up arrow, this hat. This means it's doing an XOR calibration, or this means it's doing an XOR operation on this. And this is lots of jumbling around, but this is where hexray saves us again. We can just go back down, and it just says the flag is encrypted with XOR, and it just immediately prints that the flag is CS plus this XOR that. Hexrays is much more powerful than Ghidra, but it can cost money unless you use Dogbolt. So generally what I will do is I'll throw an executable into Dogbolt hexrays first, and then go into Ghidra on my desktop to break it down further if hexrays doesn't immediately solve it. So hexrays has just done the heavy work for us. If you didn't have hexrays, what you'd have to do is build a short Python or C script that takes in the encrypted password that it prints, and then just does the XOR operation in reverse. This is XORing it by 15, if I remember correctly. So we just enter this, and bam, that's this XOR that. So this is where we move on from reverse engineering and go to web. Now, web is not a skill I am proficient at. I am not very good at it. It primarily involves exploits around PHP, Nginx, SQL injection, and cross-site scripting. PHP is a very old, very, very mature programming language for web development, pretty much. Nginx is a web server. Basically, it's how when you go to like a website like societies.ie or tlum.ie, it's the web server goes, oh, I know where all this is, and sends you those files and sends you that information. SQL injection is basically a way of finding an exposed text entry field that makes a call to a database at some point, and just manually writing the request to that database to get what you want. And finally, there's cross-site scripting. That's basically running code on the site, either client side or server side, to achieve what you want. That could be to steal users' credentials or whatever, or doing some request forgery to get extra privileges or whatever. But we're not going to go into the super deep parts of this. We will just go straight into the single web challenge, which I have shamelessly stolen from a website that I will show you later, and it is called Secure Shell. Now, Secure Shell is a challenge that I've taken from 0 days, and I'll show you the website because the 0 days challenges are very good. But if you follow this link, you'll see a website that says welcome to Secure Shell, enter a safe command, and it tells you a few bits of information. It gives you what you need to do. Now you need to run this read flag command to get it. So you also get the source, and the source might help you as well. So if I typed alert hi, so you'll see that's an unsafe command. So this is where you'd want to take a look at the source, because this might point you somewhere handy. This is literally the exact code that they are running. You can see it's running in a Docker container because they have the Docker file in your Docker Compose. Let's look at the source code. Also, the flag, it's never real. It's always a fake flag. Don't try it. You'll see here is the PHP website. You'll see, oh, there's a list of safe commands. There's ls. These are all Linux commands. There's ls for listing what's in the current directory or a directory select. There's the pwd command, which says where am I in the file system. There's the echo command, which will repeat what you say, and then there's the date command. So if we step through all of these one at a time, we type ls, we'll see, oh, we're in index.php. That's cool. Index.php is in this current directory, but what is that current directory? So we're there. What about if we see what's at the very root of your file system? We'll see, oh, there's flag, that's pretty cool, and there's read flag, that's what we know we need to run. But if I type read flag, it's not going to work because that's not on the list of safe commands. So let's try echo hi, it'll say hi back, and then if we type date, it'll say, oh, cool, today is the 12th of October at very late in the day. So we need to somehow use one of these safe commands to run a file. Now, what we do is we see, oh, it's running the command on the actual system. That's kind of unsafe. This is really, really, really bad practice, because it means if you weren't doing something like this, you could do whatever you want on the server. And you pretty much can, because one of these would allow you to run whatever you want. So what we'll do is you can get echo to print nearly anything. So if we want to see everything that's currently in the path, we type echo $path. Like, oh, that's cool. So what if we wanted to run that script? Echo basically allows you to run almost a sub bash terminal inside it to do something, which you do with this syntax. And in this case, I could do echo. What is the command that we can't do? I guess let's just get it to read that flag, shall we? So we type echo $, and then we type /read flag. Wow, there you go. That's the flag. This is because with echo you were essentially just running the command, and since echo is a safe command, it doesn't seem to check it any further. It thinks it's fine, and it'll just do whatever you want. So we know that the flag is, we'll just arrow down to get what we want. Here we go. 0 days. Oh, it's command injection. Copy that in. And bam. That is your secure shell done. So that's the live demo for there. This is where I move to the where next portion. Now, there's lots of places that you can go from here. Pretty much the sky's the limit. But here are a few places that I would recommend that you start. The first are try Hack Me or Hack the Box, both if you wanted. They're both step-by-step tutorials and practical lessons on things like cybersecurity. They take it really easily. They start assuming you have no knowledge on anything to do with cybersecurity or capture the flags, and they teach you over the time. They're really handy. They're really cool. Then there's Pico CTF, which is an endless online capture the flag with lots and lots and lots of challenges. Really good place to start as well, but I would recommend using Try Hack Me or Hack the Box in addition. And 0 Days runs something called cybersecuritychallenge.ie. It's another endless CTF, but it's specifically run by 0 Days to look for candidates for the Irish team. They're regularly adding more and more challenges there every day. If we go to cybersecuritychallenge.ie and we click play CTF, I am already logged in. But if we go to the challenges, you'll see, there's lots of setup. They have lots of crypto challenges. Oh, hey, look, it's a similar challenge to the one that I used called This Is Hex. And you'll see it's a whole big chunk of hex. Lots and lots and lots of it. And there's lots of these. There's MISC, there's reverse engineering, there's more web challenges. All of these are really, really fun. But if you do well in this, you might get an email saying, hey, you're doing pretty good. Would you like to come to this Discord and do a bit of training and be considered for the Irish team? And it's a really great experience. It's in Norway this year. It's in Poland and Romania in the next 2 years. It's really fun and you learn a lot. If you're studying computer science, cybersecurity is often a topic that isn't taught that much. And keeping your software secure and safe is almost as important as knowing how to actually write it. So this is really, really important. But there's also a dedicated society in TU Dublin, the Ethical Hacker Society based out of Blanchardstown, but they do lots of online classes and stuff. They're really handy. They're run by cybersecurity students. They're very friendly. They have lots of great talks and great meetups and everything. We hope to run 2 Capture the Flags this year, one in the first semester and one in the second semester. The second semester is in partnership with Esports Soc and Game Soc and loads of other Socs for TU Dublin. And as a society, if you want to go to 0 Days in March of 2024, we will be opening up teams for that competition. As a society, we would be able to get you completely free tickets to that competition. It was wonderful. This year I had an absolute blast. They had VR bomb defusal games, they had Mario Kart, they had team building games, they had lock picking, they had really fun practical and virtual challenges, and I'd really recommend going. Get a team of 3 or 4, come to us when sign-ups open, and go to Croke Park for a day in March over the Easter break. It's really, really fun. The final thing I want to say is, and this won't really be relevant after next week, but we're running our EGM on Tuesday the 17th of October. We have a whole load of roles. We are giving you free burgers, free drink, and then you can watch The Matrix 2 after. We are a society that has just revived in second semester of 2022, and this is the year where we build solid foundations and essentially lead what the future of the society is going to be. So if you have an interest in doing technical stuff, I'd say run for a system administrator. You will be at the heart of deciding what the infrastructure is and what our tech stack is for the next however many years. If that's where you want to go, be my guest. We don't expect any sort of pre-existing knowledge. just a willingness to learn. If you want to do social events, we have a social events officer. If you want to do a little bit of everything, we have an ordinary committee member. And if you're interested in being a core committee member, we also have the secretary role open as well. That's a lot of admin and essentially a vice chair role. But that is all for the class today. I really hope that I was able to convey as much of my interest in this to you. If you have any questions, you can always ask me personally through Discord DMs or open in the Discord server. We're available on Instagram and Discord, and of course on the Society's portal, and we will keep you in the loop with all of our events, whether they be CTF, technical, or otherwise. So thank you very much for coming to the online class. I hope this helped, and take care.